Picture this. You're standing in the shadow of a massive stone circle, its ancient surface rough under your fingertips, carrying the weight of thousands of years. The air hums with a quiet energy, as if the stones themselves are straining to tell you something lost to time. These prehistoric monuments aren't just piles of rock. They're messages, carved not in words, but in alignment, in shape, in the very way they were placed by hands that vanished millennia ago. What were they trying to say? And why go to such extraordinary lengths to say it? Think about it. Without modern tools, without written language, our ancestors moved mountains literally. They hauled stones heavier than buses across miles of wilderness, arranged them with celestial precision, and left them standing like silent witnesses to a world we can barely imagine. Stonehenge, the Carnac stones, Göbekli Tepe, these aren't just tourist attractions. They're puzzles. Each one holds clues about the people who built them, their fears, their dreams, their understanding of the universe. Were they temples to forgotten gods, ancient calendars tracking the dance of the sun and moon, or something even more profound, a bridge between the earthly and the divine? This is the silent language of stone, a language without alphabets but bursting with meaning, and for centuries we've been trying to crack its code. Today, we're going on a journey together back to a time when the world was wilder, and humanity's greatest monuments weren't skyscrapers but standing stones. We'll explore how these structures whisper secrets across the ages, revealing lost knowledge, unexpected connections, and the sheer brilliance of our ancestors. By the end, you won't just see rocks, you'll see a story, one that's been waiting for us to listen. So lean in close, the stones are about to speak. Why would ancient societies dedicate generations to hauling and arranging stones weighing tons, some transported over hundreds of miles? The answer lies in the profound role these monuments played in their world. Take the great stone circles scattered across Europe. Many align perfectly with the rising sun during solstices or equinoxes. This wasn't accidental. For farming communities, tracking the sun's path meant predicting seasons, knowing when to plant or harvest, but it went deeper than survival. These alignments suggest a sacred relationship with the cosmos, where the movement of celestial bodies held spiritual meaning. The stones became giant calendars, yes, but also temples under open skies, connecting earth to heaven. Then there are the monuments that seem designed for gathering. Places like Avebury in England or the Ring of Brodgar in Scotland could have hosted ceremonies, festivals, or even trade meetings. Imagine hundreds, perhaps thousands of people converging at these sites, united by shared rituals or communal decisions. The very act of building them would have required cooperation across clans or tribes, strengthening social bonds. The stones weren't just markers on the land, they were anchors of identity, symbols of a collective purpose that transcended individual lives. Some structures, like the Carnac alignments, stretch for miles in rows so precise they defy simple explanation. Were they territorial boundaries, asserting control over fertile land or sacred routes, or perhaps pathways for processions, guiding pilgrims toward ceremonial centers? The effort to erect them speaks to a society with complex organization, one capable of mobilizing labor on a staggering scale. And let's not forget the burial mounds and dolmens, where massive stones shielded the dead. These weren't just graves, they were statements. By honoring ancestors with such permanence, builders declared their lineage, their claim to the land, and their belief in something beyond death. What's striking is how these purposes intertwine. A single site might serve as an astronomical observatory, a ritual space, and a territorial marker all at once. The stones held layers of meaning, just as a cathedral today can be both a place of worship and a community landmark. For prehistoric people, the division between practical and sacred likely didn't exist. The cycles of nature, the presence of ancestors, the rhythms of life and death all were woven into the landscape through these monuments. So when we ask why, the answer isn't singular. These stones were libraries, calendars, temples, and meeting halls. They were ways of mapping the heavens onto the earth, of taming time itself. And perhaps most powerfully, they were declarations of belonging, of understanding, of reverence. In a world without written records, the stones became their language, one we're still learning to read. Standing on the windswept plains of southern England, Stonehenge rises like a skeletal hand grasping at the sky. Those towering sarsen stones, each weighing up to 50 tons, were dragged over 20 miles before being precisely arranged into their iconic arches. But the real marvel isn't just their size, it's their celestial choreography. At dawn on the summer solstice, the sun's first rays pierce through the monument's heart, perfectly framed between the uprights. 6 months later, during winter solstice, sunlight streams through another carefully calculated gap. This wasn't guesswork. The builders understood Earth's tilt and the sun's migration with astonishing accuracy, turning stone into a colossal astronomical clock. Then there are the blue stones, smaller but no less mysterious. These speckled rocks traveled an unbelievable 140 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales. Modern experiments show moving them would have required hundreds of people working in unison, hauling them over rivers and hills. Why go to such trouble? Chemical analysis reveals many blue stones were believed to have healing properties, their crushed fragments found in ancient burial sites across Britain. Some researchers think Stonehenge may have been a prehistoric Lourdes where pilgrims came seeking cures. Others point to the eerie acoustic properties of these stones when struck. They produce metallic echoes resembling gongs, possibly used in sound-based rituals. Beneath the visible stones lies an even more startling secret. Ground-penetrating radar has uncovered a hidden landscape, a labyrinth of buried pits, processional avenues, and 17 previously unknown shrines. One circular structure appears to mirror Stonehenge itself, creating a sort of twin monument underground. Human remains found nearby show signs of careful arrangement, some skulls placed in neat rows, others bearing marks of ceremonial defleshing. This paints a picture of complex death rites, where ancestors may have been venerated as intermediaries between the living and the cosmos. The precision of Stonehenge's geometry reveals minds far ahead of their time. The inner horseshoe of trilithons forms perfect Pythagorean triangles, mathematical relationships not officially discovered for another 2,000 years. The outer circle stones are subtly shaped wider at the top to counteract perspective distortion when viewed from the ground. Even the lintels curve slightly to maintain the illusion of straight lines across great distances. These weren't crude rocks piled haphazardly. They were engineered with the same care as a Renaissance cathedral. Modern astronomers have identified at least 15 significant celestial alignments built into the structure. Certain stones line up with moonrises that only occur every 18.6 years, a cycle called the lunar standstill. Others frame the setting points of key stars used for navigation. The entire monument sits at the intersection of several ancient ley lines in visible energy, paths some believe were sacred to Neolithic cultures. Whether these alignments were practical calendars, spiritual gateways, or both remains hotly debated. What's undeniable is that the builders saw the heavens and earth as intimately connected, with Stonehenge as their meeting place. Recent isotope analysis of animal bones from nearby Durrington Walls, a massive settlement contemporary with Stonehenge, reveals something extraordinary. Pigs slaughtered at winter solstice were brought from as far away as Scotland, while summer solstice feasts featured livestock from local pastures. This suggests Stonehenge wasn't just a local project, it drew people from across Britain, becoming a seasonal hub where scattered tribes reunited under the stones. Though winter gatherings may have been particularly significant, a time when the weakening sun needed human intervention through ritual to ensure its rebirth. Theories about Stonehenge's purpose continue evolving. Some researchers now propose it functioned as a kind of Neolithic computer, its moving parts, like the since-removed slaughter stone, used to predict eclipses. Others suggest the blue stones formed a healing circle where water was poured over them to create charged elixirs. What's clear is that Stonehenge was never just one thing. Like a great medieval cathedral, it served multiple roles: calendrical, spiritual, social, changing over its 1,500 years of use. Each generation may have reinterpreted its meaning, adding new layers to this eternal stone puzzle. One tantalizing clue comes from the surrounding landscape. The nearby cursus, an enormous rectangular earthwork, aligns with sunrise on the equinoxes, while the avenue processional path mirrors the Milky Way's path during certain seasons. Even more remarkably, Stonehenge sits at the center of a vast cosmological map with other ancient sites, positioned to mirror constellations as seen from this spot. This implies the entire Salisbury Plain was deliberately arranged as a mirror of the heavens, making Stonehenge the beating heart of a sacred geography we're only beginning to understand. Perhaps most humbling is realizing how much knowledge has been lost. The builders left no written records, yet their understanding of geometry, astronomy, and community organization rivals modern expertise. They moved mountains without wheels, calculated celestial cycles without telescopes, and created enduring monuments without metal tools. Stonehenge stands as both an achievement and a question, a reminder that primitive is a word we use for cultures whose sophistication we've yet to comprehend. Every new discovery peels back another layer, revealing not crude ancestors, but master architects speaking to us across 50 centuries in the only language that could survive the ages, the silent, steadfast language of stone. Across the rolling fields of Brittany, the Carnac stones stand like an army frozen in time. 3,000 silent sentinels arranged in perfectly straight rows stretching nearly 2 miles. Unlike the circular formations of Stonehenge, these megaliths march across the landscape with military precision, some towering over 13 feet tall while others barely reach knee height. Dating back 6,500 years, they predate Egypt's pyramids by more than a millennium, yet their orderly arrangement suggests a society capable of complex planning and coordination. What's haunting is their uniformity, each stone placed at measured intervals, creating corridors that seem to pull the eye toward some unseen focal point now lost to history. Local legends claim the stones are pagan soldiers turned to rock by Christian saints, but archaeology tells a more fascinating story. The alignments follow subtle geological fault lines, leading some researchers to propose they functioned as an ancient seismic warning system. The theory suggests the stones were placed where groundwater would rise during tectonic shifts, creating visible pools that alerted communities to impending earthquakes. Others note how certain rows point directly to burial mounds, implying ceremonial processional routes where the living walked alongside the spirits of ancestors. The most striking alignment isn't celestial but terrestrial. Several rows precisely frame the rising moon over nearby Gavrinis Island, home to a Neolithic tomb covered in enigmatic spiral carvings. Among the mysteries is the Manic alignment, 11 converging rows of 1,099 stones forming a vast trapezoid. At its western end lies a stone circle resembling a giant cork, as if marking the entrance to this megalithic maze. Excavations revealed post holes suggesting wooden structures once stood among the stones, possibly temporary shelters for seasonal gatherings. Charred animal bones and pottery shards indicate feasting occurred here, but the real surprise came when archaeologists found crushed seashell pigments mixed with ochre, evidence the stones may have been vividly painted, transforming the gray monoliths into a colorful ritual landscape. The nearby Ceremonial alignment holds another puzzle. Its stones decrease in height from west to east like a staircase descending into the earth. Ground surveys show they sit atop a natural underground spring, fueling speculation about water-based rituals. Even more intriguing are the witness stones, smaller megaliths placed at right angles to the main rows, almost like survey markers. Some researchers propose they formed sightlines for territorial boundaries, while folk traditions insist they mark ley lines of earth energy. The truth may be more practical experiments demonstrate that the rows create wind channels, potentially amplifying sound for ceremonial music or communication across long distances. Recent LiDAR scans revealed something textbooks never mentioned. The entire Carnac complex sits at the center of a vast artificial mound system. These long, low earthworks radiate outward like spokes, intersecting with stone rows at key points. One theory suggests they served as Neolithic calendar strips, with each mound representing a lunar cycle. Others argue they're territorial markers for seasonal grazing lands. What's undeniable is the scale of labor involved. Moving these stones would have required entire communities working together for generations. The consistency in design across centuries implies a shared cultural knowledge passed down through oral traditions we can only guess at today. Unlike Stonehenge's celestial theatrics, Carnac's genius lies in its relationship with the living landscape. The grand menhir brisset, now broken but once Europe's tallest standing stone at 66 feet, aligns with distant mountain notches where the sun sets on cross-quarter days midway between solstices and equinoxes. Nearby, the Krukuno stone rectangle frames the summer solstice sunrise with mathematical precision, proving astronomical knowledge existed here too, just applied differently. The most poignant discovery came from soil analysis. Pollen samples show the area was deliberately cleared of forests before the stones were erected, as if creating a ceremonial arena where earth and sky could converse uninterrupted. Perhaps the stone's greatest lesson is how they challenge our assumptions about prehistoric societies. Their arrangement reveals an understanding of geometry rivaling later civilizations. The angles between rows form perfect Pythagorean triangles centuries before Pythagoras was born. The sheer number of stones suggests a population density in Neolithic Brittany far beyond what historians previously believed possible, and the absence of defensive structures implies a rare period of peace and cooperation where communal effort trumped tribal conflict. The Carnac stones refuse to fit neatly into our categories of ritual site or practical tool. Like all great megaliths, they whisper that ancient people saw the world in ways we're still struggling to comprehend, where every stone was a word in a language written on the land itself. Perched on a windswept hill in southeastern Turkey, Gerbically Teep shatters everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. This sprawling complex of circular enclosures, carved with elaborate animal reliefs, wasn't built by farmers or city dwellers. It was crafted by nomadic hunter-gatherers over 11,000 years ago, a staggering 7 millennia before the Great Pyramid of Giza. The sheer scale defies logic. 20 massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing 16 tons, arranged in precise circles and buried under thousands of tons of earth. Who organized these prehistoric people to quarry, transport, and erect such monoliths without the lure of permanent settlements or agriculture? What compelled them to create this monumental sanctuary in a world where survival was a daily struggle? The carvings at Gerbically Teep are a menagerie of ancient symbolism: scorpions, foxes, and vultures rendered with startling artistry. But the most haunting figures are the abstract humanoid pillars, their long arms bent at the elbows as if frozen in ritual motion. Some researchers believe these represent ancestor spirits or deities, making this potentially the oldest known temple on Earth. The arrangement of animals isn't random either. Reliefs of dangerous creatures dominate the outer walls, while docile species face inward, possibly representing a symbolic boundary between the sacred and the profane. Even more intriguing are the carvings of headless humans and clustered skulls found nearby, suggesting this site may have been central to early death cults or rites of passage. What truly baffles archaeologists is the site's deliberate burial. Each stone circle was carefully interred under mountains of rubble, preserved like a time capsule. This wasn't erosion or neglect, it was a purposeful act repeated over centuries. One theory posits that new enclosures were built to replace old ones, with the retired versions ceremonially killed and buried. Another suggests the burial was part of a grand cosmological belief, perhaps mirroring the cycles of death and rebirth observed in nature. The layers of sediment reveal something extraordinary. Göbekli Tepe wasn't abandoned. It was tenderly sealed, as if its builders wanted to preserve its power for future generations, or prevent something within from escaping. The implications rewrite human history. Conventional wisdom held that monument building arose only after agriculture created surplus labor. But Gerbically Tepe turns that narrative upside down. Here, hunter-gatherers expended immense energy on a non-utilitarian structure, proving spiritual or social motivations drove complexity long before farming. Some researchers now think the site might have been the catalyst for agriculture itself, a gathering place so permanent it forced people to cultivate nearby wild grains to sustain prolonged stays. The remains of butchered aurochs and gazelles suggest massive feasts, hinting at communal gatherings that unified scattered bands. This wasn't just a temple, it could have been the glue that first bound nomadic groups into larger societies. Groundbreaking new studies reveal even more sophistication. Geomagnetic surveys show at least 20 circles spread across 22 acres, with the oldest rings exhibiting more refined craftsmanship than later ones, a clear sign of cultural regression. The largest pillars stand at the center of each ring, possibly representing shamanic figures or clan totems. Carvings of snakes and birds align with solstice sunrises, while stone basins may have held hallucinogenic brews for rituals. Most remarkably, the site's builders appear to have had advanced knowledge of geometry. The circle's layouts form precise equilateral triangles, and pillars are positioned to create intentional acoustic effects, amplifying drum beats or chants. Göbekli Tepe's true function remains debated. Some see it as a regional pilgrimage center, drawing clans for seasonal ceremonies. Others propose it was an astronomical observatory, with its pillars mapping constellations as they appeared 12,000 years ago. The most provocative theory suggests it was a school for shamanic initiates, where apprentices underwent vision quests in its darkened enclosures. What's undeniable is that this site marks a turning point in human consciousness, the moment we began shaping our environment not just for survival, but for meaning. Its buried circles whisper a radical idea: civilization didn't create religion. Religion may have created civilization. As excavations continue, each discovery deepens the mystery. Recently uncovered carvings depict a comet strike around 10,950 BCE, a date eerily close to evidence of a real climate catastrophe that plunged the world into a mini ice age. Could Göbekli Tepe have been a response to this disaster, a plea to the gods carved in stone, or was it a warning buried when its purpose was fulfilled? The answers remain locked in those towering pillars, but one thing is clear: humanity's first monument wasn't a granary or a fortress. It was a temple, a testament to our ancestors' hunger for answers written in the language of stone and sky. Rising from the emerald hills of Ireland's Boyne Valley, Newgrange isn't just a tomb, it's a celestial time machine. This massive circular mound, older than the pyramids, hides a secret that unfolds just once a year. At dawn on the winter solstice, a slender beam of sunlight creeps through the roof box above its entrance, slithering 60 feet down the narrow passage to illuminate the inner chamber in a golden glow. This isn't luck. The entire structure was engineered with millimeter precision, its corridor angled exactly to capture the year's weakest sunrise. For 17 minutes, the darkness that held sway for 364 days is banished, as if the builders sought to defy death itself with light. The stones guarding Newgrange's entrance tell their own story. Covered in spirals, diamonds, and zigzags, these carvings aren't random graffiti, they're a symbolic language. The triple spiral inside the chamber, mirrored at other Neolithic sites, might represent the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Some researchers see the concentric circles as maps of the otherworld, while others interpret the serpentine patterns as underground rivers believed to flow between realms. What's striking is how these symbols cluster around the solstice lightbox, as if marking a portal. The quartz facade, gleaming white in antiquity, would have made the mound appear to shimmer, a beacon for both the living and the dead. Beneath the artistic splendor lies staggering engineering. The corbelled roof of the central chamber has kept the space dry for 5 millennia, each stone layer slightly overlapping the last until they meet at a perfect apex. The outer curbstones, some weighing 5 tons, were hauled from miles away and fitted together like puzzle pieces. Even the white quartz covering the facade was imported from the Wicklow Mountains 50 miles distant. This wasn't haphazard construction. It was a generational project demanding mathematical skill we rarely associate with prehistoric cultures. The alignment alone required observing solar movements for decades, perhaps centuries, before the first stone was set. Newgrange's true genius emerges when seen as part of a larger cosmic landscape. Nearby sister tombs at Noath and Douth form a triad, with Newgrange perfectly positioned to frame the winter solstice sunrise while Noath captures the equinoxes. Together, they create a prehistoric observatory complex tracking the sun's entire yearly journey. Even more remarkably, aerial surveys reveal the 3 mounds sit at the center of a vast astronomical clock, with surrounding smaller tombs marking lunar cycles. This suggests the entire Boyne Valley was deliberately arranged as a sacred calendar, where burials weren't just about honoring the dead but aligning them with celestial rhythms. The human remains found inside add another layer of mystery. Cremated bones from at least 5 individuals were discovered in the chamber's recesses, but unlike typical burials, these show no signs of personal adornment or grave goods. This hints at a ritual beyond simple interment, perhaps symbolic offerings where the dead became conduits between worlds. Soil analysis reveals traces of hallucinogenic plants, suggesting ceremonies may have involved altered states to commune with ancestors during the solstice light show. The acoustics amplify this theory. The chamber's geometry creates eerie echoes, with certain frequencies producing resonant tones that could induce trance-like states. What sets Newgrange apart from other megalithic sites is its intimacy. While Stonehenge impresses with scale, Newgrange draws you into its embrace. The narrow passage forces visitors to crouch, mimicking a symbolic return to the womb before emerging into the domed chamber, a space designed not for crowds but for small, sacred gatherings. The winter solstice alignment isn't a public spectacle like Stonehenge's summer gathering. It's a private miracle witnessed by few, as if the builders reserved their deepest mysteries for initiates. This careful curation of experience speaks to a sophisticated spiritual tradition, one that understood the power of controlled revelation. Modern reconstructions sometimes obscure how radical Newgrange's design truly was. Originally, the entrance would have been pitch black until that magical solstice moment. The sudden intrusion of light after months of darkness would have felt miraculous, a divine sign that the sun's return wasn't guaranteed, but earned through proper ritual observance. The bones within weren't merely stored, they were actively participating in this cosmic drama, their spirits perhaps believed to intercede with the forces governing life and death. In this light, Newgrange wasn't just a tomb, it was a theater of eternity, where every stone played a role in humanity's oldest story, the struggle to find meaning in the turning of the year. The most poignant lesson of Newgrange lies in its endurance. 5,000 years of storms, invasions, and neglect couldn't erase its solstice miracle. Even when the mound was lost for centuries, covered by soil and forgotten, the alignment remained true. When archaeologists rediscovered the roof box in 1967, they witnessed the ancient precision still functioning perfectly, a testament to builders who thought not in years but in millennia. In a world obsessed with the now, Newgrange stands as a reminder that some truths are worth carving in stone, meant to outlast languages, empires, and even memory itself. The night sky was more than just a canvas of stars to our ancestors. It was a living map, a sacred text, and a celestial clock all in one. Across continents and cultures, prehistoric builders went to extraordinary lengths to embed astronomical knowledge into stone. At Scotland's Callanish stones, the monoliths fan out like spokes on a wheel, with key alignments pointing to the moon's most extreme rising and setting positions during its 18.6-year cycle. Unlike solar events that repeat annually, tracking this lunar pattern required generations of patient observation, suggesting these communities preserved knowledge across lifetimes with remarkable accuracy. But why invest such effort? For farming societies, predicting solstices meant safeguarding survival, knowing precisely when to plant before winter's grip or harvest before autumn rains. The Mnajdra temple in Malta takes this practicality further. Its doorway frames the equinox sunrise so precisely that the first light slices through like a laser, while subsidiary corridors mark the solstices. Yet some alignments defy utilitarian explanations. The 5,000-year-old sunstone at Sweden's Älvstenar doesn't just mark solstices. It pinpoints the cross-quarter days midway between them, dates with no obvious agricultural purpose but deep significance in later Celtic festivals. This hints at a dual role. These sites likely blended practical almanacs with spiritual theater, where celestial events became moments of communal awe. The sophistication of these alignments shatters stereotypes about prehistoric primitiveness. Consider the Nebra sky disk, a 3,600-year-old bronze map of the Pleiades and Orion. Found in Germany but echoing orientations seen at Stonehenge, it proves astronomical knowledge was exchanged across vast distances. Even more impressive is how some monuments compensated for celestial drift. Earth's axial wobble gradually shifts stellar positions over centuries. The builders of Newgrange adjusted their solar alignment over time, subtly modifying the roof box to maintain accuracy as the solstice sunrise's angle changed. This wasn't just observation, it was long-term scientific adaptation. Spiritual interpretations add another layer. At Mexico's Chalcatzingo, Olmec carvings show rulers emerging from cave mouths aligned with zenith sun passages, moments when the sun stands directly overhead with no shadow. These events, unique to tropical latitudes, were likely seen as portals where rulers communed with deities. Similarly, Egypt's Abu Simbel temple illuminates its inner sanctum statues of gods just twice yearly, on the pharaoh's birthday and coronation date, merging cosmic mechanics with divine kingship. The common thread, whether in Celtic Ireland or pharaonic Egypt, controlling light became synonymous with harnessing cosmic power. The most tantalizing alignments involve rare celestial events. A stone row at Portugal's Almenda's Cromlech frames the supernova that created the Vela pulsar around 12,000 years ago, an event bright enough to be visible by day for weeks. Could this have been seen as a divine omen, immortalized in stone? Even eclipses may be encoded. The U-shaped formation of Georgia's Paravani Lake megaliths creates sightlines that predicted lunar eclipses centuries before Babylonian astronomers documented the Saros cycle. Such finds suggest these monuments weren't just passive calendars but active tools for anticipating celestial drama. Debates continue about how this knowledge was transmitted without writing. The oral traditions of indigenous Australians offer clues. Their songlines encode star paths as mnemonic chants, allowing navigation data to survive millennia. Similarly, Polynesian voyagers used stone star compasses to memorize hundreds of azimuths. Perhaps megalithic cultures had their own memory palaces, where stones served as physical anchors for complex mental maps. The alignment at Ireland's Loughcrew cairns, where sunlight illuminates specific carvings only during the spring and autumn equinoxes, could have functioned as a mnemonic trigger for reciting seasonal lore. What unites these sites across time and space is their creators' hunger to find order in the cosmos. From the sun daggers of Choco Canyon to the moon-watching platforms of Peru's Chanquillo, these stones reflect a universal human impulse to transform the chaos of the heavens into something measurable, meaningful, and sacred. They remind us that astronomy wasn't invented by Galileo with his telescope, but by countless anonymous sky watchers who first dared to read the stars in stone. Running your fingers over the weathered surface of a 5,000-year-old standing stone, you might feel the shallow grooves of a spiral carving, a message from the past etched in stone rather than ink. These enigmatic symbols appear across continents, from the labyrinthine spirals at Newgrange to the geometric zigzags on Scottish megaliths, each one a potential key to understanding prehistoric minds. Take the cup and ring marks found from Portugal to Norway, circular depressions surrounded by concentric rings, often connected by meandering channels. Some archaeologists interpret these as maps of sacred springs or underground water systems, vital knowledge for Neolithic communities. Others propose they represent celestial phenomena, with the central cup marking Polaris and the rings tracing the orbits of stars. The repetition of certain motifs across vast distances raises tantalizing questions. The triple spiral found inside Newgrange's chamber appears again on Malta's temple altars and in Iberian rock art separated by thousands of miles and years. Could this symbolize a shared belief in life, death, rebirth cycles, or was it a sacred design passed along ancient trade routes? Even more intriguing are the axe carvings found in Brittany's menhirs and Ireland's passage tombs. These aren't mere tool depictions, their exaggerated, stylized forms suggest they may represent thunder gods or divine weapons, echoing later Indo-European myths. The consistency in these symbols implies a visual language that transcended local dialects, perhaps understood by spiritual specialists traveling between communities. Some carvings defy straightforward interpretation. The checkerboard patterns on Orkney's Micho tomb resemble game boards, but similar designs in Native American petroglyphs are known to represent portals between worlds. The serpentine carvings at Gavrinis in France twist around stones like cosmic rivers, while identical motifs in Australia's Aboriginal art symbolize ancestral creator beings. This global resonance hints at archetypal images emerging independently across cultures, a shared human tendency to process universal experiences like water, danger, or the divine through similar visual shorthand. Recent digital imaging techniques reveal previously invisible details. At Spain's Dolmen de Soto, laser scans uncovered hidden carvings of daggers and human figures superimposed atop older symbols, suggesting the site was ritually recharged over centuries. Some stones even show evidence of colored pigments. What we now see as austere gray monoliths may have once been vibrant red, white, or ochre, turning ceremonial sites into kaleidoscopic dreamscapes. The famous hooded figure carving at Ireland's Loughcrew is barely visible to the naked eye, but reflectance transformation imaging showed it clutching what appears to be a musical instrument, offering rare insight into ceremonial practices. The most profound symbols may be those that mimic natural phenomena. The wave-like patterns on Portugal's Almendar's menhirs precisely match the ripples of nearby streams when sunlight hits them at dawn. At Scotland's Kilmartin Glen, cup marks fill with rainwater during storms, creating miniature constellations that mirror the night sky. These dynamic interactions suggest the carvings weren't static decorations, but living elements designed to harmonize with their environment, a dialogue between human artistry and earthly processes. Decoding these symbols requires peeling back layers of cultural context. The zigzags common in passage tombs may seem abstract until you consider Neolithic beliefs about the underworld as a realm of alternating layers of earth and sky. The concentric circles dotting Atlantic coast megaliths gain meaning when viewed alongside indigenous Australian dot paintings that represent sacred sites. Even the simplest cup marks might be more than decorative. Experiments show they can produce rhythmic percussion when struck, turning stone surfaces into Neolithic musical instruments for ritual performances. What emerges is a picture of sophisticated symbolic thought long before written language. These carvings weren't primitive doodles but a complex system of meaning, one where a spiral could simultaneously represent the sun's journey, the cycle of seasons, and the soul's passage into the afterlife. The stones whisper in a language we're only beginning to comprehend, where every curve and dot was a deliberate choice, a frozen moment of ancient storytelling waiting to be read. Consider the Baalbek stones in Lebanon, some weighing over 800 tons, or the mighty sarsens of Stonehenge dragged across 20 miles of rugged terrain. Moving these giants seems impossible without modern machinery, yet prehistoric builders accomplished it with nothing but ingenuity and muscle. Experimental archaeologists have recreated Neolithic techniques, showing how log rollers and sledges greased with animal fat could transport multi-ton blocks. At Stonehenge, teams using these methods moved replica stones at a pace of about 1 mile per day, a staggering feat when multiplied across hundreds of workers and months of labor. But the real magic happened at the construction site. At Britain's Avebury, giant stones were maneuvered into precisely dug pits using a system of ropes, wooden frames, and counterweights. The process wasn't just brute strength, it was physics in action, with builders leveraging balance and momentum to tilt monoliths into perfect vertical alignment. The joints between stones reveal even greater sophistication. At Newgrange, the roof stones fit together using corbelling, a technique where each layer slightly overlaps the one below, distributing weight so precisely that the chamber has remained waterproof for 5,000 years. The trilithons of Stonehenge showcase mortise and tenon joints, where protruding knobs on upright stones slot into matching hollows on lintels. This isn't just stone stacking, it's architecture. The builders understood compression, load-bearing angles, and the importance of slight outward leans to prevent collapse, knowledge we'd later associate with Gothic cathedrals. Even more impressively, many megaliths were shaped with stone mauls to create optical illusions. The uprights at Stonehenge taper slightly toward the top, so they appear straight when viewed from below, a refinement previously thought impossible before the classical era. While Egypt's pyramids relied on ramps and Mesopotamia's ziggurats used baked bricks, Europe's megalith builders developed distinct methods. The Callanish stones in Scotland were erected by gradually rocking them into position with wooden levers, a technique still used by modern stonemasons. In the Orkney Islands, archaeologists found stone, shoes, rounded boulders placed beneath megaliths to pivot them into place like giant ball bearings. The Carnac alignments in France feature stones with carefully flattened bases, proving builders' new stability depended on maximizing surface contact with the ground. These weren't random experiments, they were regional engineering traditions, passed down through generations of specialists who refined their craft over centuries. The social implications are equally astounding. Moving a single 30-ton Stonehenge sarsen would have required 500 people pulling on ropes made of twisted plant fibers. Feeding and housing these crews meant organizing food surpluses, temporary shelters, and tool production on an industrial scale. The quarries tell part of the story at Wales' Carnac, where Stonehenge's bluestones originated. Workers used heat to fracture rock faces, then extracted blocks with wooden wedges that expanded when soaked with water. But the untold story lies in the social contracts that made such cooperation possible. Whether through religious fervor, chieftain mandates, or communal decision-making, these projects required societies capable of long-term planning and collective sacrifice. Perhaps most humbling is realizing what we've lost. Modern engineers using Neolithic techniques often struggle to replicate these achievements, discovering hidden complexities only through trial and error. When a team attempted to erect a Stonehenge replica in Washington state, they found that the seemingly crude stone mauls were perfectly weighted for controlled strikes, and that sand made a better lubricant than modern alternatives for moving heavy loads. The ancients' intimate knowledge of materials which stones would resist frost, which woods wouldn't splinter under strain, came from millennia of accumulated wisdom, most of it unrecorded. These monuments stand as testament to a different kind of intelligence, one that measured progress not in gigabytes or horsepower, but in generations working toward a shared vision etched in stone. Beneath the silent surfaces of ancient stones lies a hidden dimension of sound, one that modern researchers are only beginning to hear. At Malta's Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a subterranean labyrinth carved 3,000 years before the pyramids, something extraordinary happens when you speak in the so-called oracle chamber. Certain frequencies resonate through the curved limestone walls, creating vibrations that seem to originate inside your skull rather than from your ears. Tests show the chamber amplifies frequencies between 90 and 120 Hz, the same range known to stimulate brain activity linked to trance states in shamanic rituals. This isn't accidental architecture. The Hypogeum's creators sculpted the space to harness sound as a tool for transcendence, turning stone into a kind of Neolithic tuning fork for the mind. Across Europe, other megaliths reveal similar acoustic intentions. The massive bluestones at Stonehenge produce metallic ringing tones when struck, a property not found in local sarsen stones. Experiments with replica stones show these sounds could carry for miles, possibly serving as ritual signals or sonic markers during ceremonies. Even more intriguing are the cup-marked stones scattered from Scotland to Portugal. When tapped with small pebbles, these indentations emit distinct pitches, transforming random-looking carvings into prehistoric xylophones. Archaeoacoustics researchers have mapped these tones, discovering some sites feature stones deliberately arranged in musical scales, an ancient pentatonic orchestra frozen in stone. The psychological impact of these soundscapes can't be overstated. At Ireland's Cairn L, a passage tomb's interior amplifies rhythmic chanting while dampening high frequencies, creating a bass-heavy resonance that vibrates through the body. Modern participants report feelings of dissociation and time distortion after just minutes of exposure, effects mirroring descriptions of ritual ecstasy in early Celtic texts. Similar phenomena occur in Newgrange's chamber, where the corbelled ceiling reflects sound waves in precise patterns, causing whispers to travel unnaturally along the walls as if carried by invisible hands. These weren't just clever acoustical quirks, they were technologies of consciousness, carefully engineered to dissolve the boundary between physical and spiritual realms. Healing may have been another function of these sonic environments. Studies at the Rollright Stones in England reveal that certain monoliths emit ultrasonic frequencies when wind passes through their natural fissures, sound waves now used in modern physiotherapy to stimulate tissue repair. Folk traditions from Brittany to India speak of singing stones with curative powers, and recent experiments show prolonged exposure to low-frequency vibrations can reduce pain perception by altering brainwave activity. The massive dolmens of Korea, often positioned near natural springs, amplify the sound of flowing water into a constant low hum, creating ambient sound baths that may have served as prehistoric wellness centers. The global prevalence of these acoustic features suggests a shared understanding of sound's transformative power. From the echoing chambers of Peru's Chavin de Huanta to the lithophones of Vietnam's Stone Plateau, ancient builders manipulated stone to create intentional auditory experiences. Some researchers propose these sites formed a network of sacred acoustics, where initiates underwent standardized sonic rituals across continents. Others argue the similarities reflect universal human responses to specific frequencies, our brains hardwired to interpret certain vibrations as sacred long before organized religion existed. What's undeniable is that these stones were never truly silent. Stripped of their original context, the chants, drumbeats, and ritual noises that once animated them, we're only now hearing the faintest echoes of their purpose. The next time you see a weathered megalith, try this. Press your ear against its cold surface and tap gently. You might just hear the ghosts of ancient songs waiting 5,000 years to be heard again. Beneath the rolling green hills of Europe and the rugged coastlines of Korea, ancient burial mounds stand as silent guardians of the dead. These monumental tombs, whether the towering tumuli of Scandinavia or the table-like dolmens of East Asia, reveal a universal human impulse to honor those who came before with more than just memory. The artifacts left inside speak volumes: polished stone axes placed in the hands of chieftains, delicate amber beads adorning women, and pottery filled with long-evaporated offerings of food and drink. These weren't mere grave goods, they were provisions for a journey, carefully selected to accompany the deceased into whatever lay beyond. At Denmark's Bronze Age Borum Eshoj mound, analysis of oak coffins revealed woolen clothing dyed vibrant blues and reds, garments meant to clothe the dead in dignity for eternity. The celestial alignments of these tombs suggest our ancestors saw death as a cosmic event. Ireland's Carnac passage tombs point to the summer solstice sunset, flooding their chambers with golden light as if reopening a doorway between worlds. In Korea's Gochang Dolmen fields, certain capstones align with the winter solstice sunrise, mirroring patterns found as far away as Portugal's Anta Grande do Zambujeiro. This wasn't coincidence, it was cosmology carved in stone. The builders seemed to believe that in these liminal moments, when the sun stood still at the turn of the year, the veil between the living and the dead grew thin enough to touch. Some mounds take this connection further. The tomb of the eagles on Orkney contained over 1,600 sea eagle talons alongside human bones, suggesting the birds served as psychopomps, spiritual guides believed to carry souls to the afterlife. Similar bird symbolism appears in Native American burial mounds and Siberian kurgan tombs, hinting at a shared archetype spanning continents. The rituals surrounding these burials were often as elaborate as the constructions themselves. At Spain's Dolmen de Menga, researchers found evidence of ceremonial fires burning for days before interment, their ashes deliberately layered with seashells from distant coasts. In Brittany's Carnac region, broken pottery found near tomb entrances suggests feasting rituals where vessels were shattered to symbolically release their contents to the spirit world. Most poignant are the killed artifacts, tools, and weapons deliberately bent or broken before burial. A bronze dagger from Germany's Lubingen mound had been ritually folded in half, not to render it useless, but to transform it into a sacred offering by sending its essence into the afterlife. The scale of these projects reveals how deeply ancestor veneration shaped early societies. South Korea's Ganghwa Dolmen, weighing over 200 tons, required coordinated labor rivaling Egypt's pyramid builders, all to shelter a single burial chamber. In England's West Kennet Long Barrow, generations of bones were carefully sorted and rearranged over centuries, skulls placed in one niche, long bones in another, as if maintaining an organized community beyond death. The recent discovery of a mass child burial near Stonehenge, where the remains showed signs of careful arrangement and accompanying precious goods, suggests even the youngest members of society were honored with profound ceremonial care. What emerges from these silent mounds is a picture of death not as an end, but as a transformation. The Neolithic farmers who built Newgrange, the Bronze Age metalworkers who raised the royal mounds of Uppsala, the unknown cultures behind Japan's mysterious keyhole-shaped coffin, all shared a conviction that the dead remained active participants in the world. The alignment of tombs with solstices may have been more than symbolic. It could reflect a belief that ancestors wielded influence over seasonal cycles, their favor ensuring good harvests. In this light, the mounds weren't just memorials, they were power stations, places where the living could commune with those who now moved among the stars. Modern archaeology continues uncovering layers of meaning in these sacred spaces. Ground-penetrating radar at Poland's Wojciechow's Long Barrows revealed hidden offering pits filled with charred grain, suggesting annual death anniversary rituals. DNA analysis from Germany's Unetis culture mounds shows some high-status burials contained individuals from hundreds of miles away, implying pilgrimage-like funeral processions. Perhaps most moving are the rare loving cups found in British and Irish tombs, paired drinking vessels placed so the dead would never thirst in the afterlife, nor drink alone. These intimate details remind us that behind every monumental stone, there were hands that grieved, hearts that hoped, and a shared human longing to whisper across the divide of time. From the windswept moors of Scotland to the misty highlands of Ethiopia, and from the volcanic islands of Korea to the dense jungles of India, massive stones rise from the earth in eerily similar formations. How is it possible that cultures separated by oceans and millennia independently conceived of nearly identical structures, whether the dolmens of Brittany or those of the Caucasus, the menhirs of Portugal or the phallic stones of West Africa? One compelling theory points to ancient maritime networks we've only begun to uncover. Recent studies of obsidian trade routes show seafaring peoples moved between continents much earlier than previously believed. A stone adze found in Timor, crafted from rock quarried in New Guinea, proves island-hopping voyages were occurring over 40,000 years ago. Could similar journeys have carried more than tools, perhaps blueprints for sacred architecture? The evidence mounts when examining construction techniques. The tapering method used to erect Japan's Oyu stone circles mirrors that of Ireland's wedge tombs, both employing counterweight systems to position capstones with millimeter precision. Even more striking are the symbolic parallels. The spiral carvings at Malta's Tarxian temples reappear on Brazil's Amazonian megaliths, while the zigzag patterns on Scottish standing stones are nearly indistinguishable from those on Vietnamese lithophones. These aren't generic shapes, they're specific design languages shared across cultures with no known contact. Yet another camp argues for psychic unity, the idea that humans everywhere arrived at similar solutions when confronted with universal spiritual questions. Facing mortality, cosmic wonder, and the cycles of nature, disparate cultures may have independently turned to stone as the ultimate symbol of permanence. The Berber tribes of North Africa, the Dong people of China, and the Choctaw of North America all describe megaliths as petrified giants or frozen ancestors, suggesting a shared psychological impulse to animate the inanimate. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Coastal communities from Portugal to India certainly had the means to exchange ideas. The presence of Mediterranean shells in Norwegian burial mounds proves Neolithic trade routes spanned continents. But some megalithic hotspots like Easter Island or Sulawesi were likely isolated enough to foster independent development. What's undeniable is the deeper current connecting these sites, a human longing to mark the landscape with something enduring. Whether inspired by trade, migration, or shared dreams, these stones became anchors of meaning in an uncertain world, a silent language spoken in every tongue. Theories swirl around megaliths like mist through standing stones, some grounded in science, others drifting into realms of imagination. Among the most persistent alternative ideas is the concept of ley lines, invisible energy channels said to crisscross the globe, connecting sacred sites. Proponents point to the straight line alignments between Stonehenge, Glastonbury Tor, and other landmarks, suggesting prehistoric people built monuments along these energetic pathways. While mainstream archaeologists attribute these alignments to practical factors like trade routes or sightlines, the ley line theory persists, fueled by dowsing rods that supposedly twitch when crossing these hidden currents. Then there's the controversial notion that megaliths functioned as ancient power plants. Some researchers highlight the piezoelectric properties of certain stones, like quartz-rich granite, which generate small electrical charges under pressure. They speculate that arrangements like the Carnac alignments might have harnessed telluric currents, natural electrical flows within the earth. Experiments at sites like England's Rollright stones have detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations, though skeptics argue these could result from underground water flows or mineral deposits. The theory gains traction from folk traditions. Breton legends speak of menhirs singing during storms, possibly describing static discharges. Alien intervention theories, though widely dismissed, reveal more about modern anxieties than ancient history. The precision of Baalbek's foundation stones or Puma Punku's geometric cuts sparks claims of lost technologies or extraterrestrial guidance. Yet these ideas often overlook simpler explanations like the discovery of stone working tools at these sites or the painstaking methods replicated by modern experimental archaeologists. What's fascinating isn't the validity of these claims, but why they resonate. In the absence of definitive answers, megaliths become mirrors, reflecting our own era's obsessions with energy, lost civilizations, and cosmic connections. More plausible yet still contested are interpretations linking megaliths to seismic activity. The frequency of fault lines near sites like Scotland's Carnac stones has led some geologists to propose they served as earthquake predictors. Certain cup-marked stones emit low-frequency vibrations when tectonic stress builds, a phenomenon documented at Turkey's Göbekli Tepe. Could these have been Neolithic early warning systems? Opponents counter that many megaliths sit far from fault zones, but the theory gains credence from Japan's ancient earthquake-proof stone arrangements, which folklore says were placed by ancestors to stabilize the land. The challenge lies in separating speculation from substance. Take the acoustic properties of megaliths. While their resonance effects are measurable, interpretations diverge wildly. Archaeoacoustics experts demonstrate how chambers like Newgrange amplify specific frequencies, but debates rage over whether this was intentional architectural genius or a happy accident of physics. Similarly, claims that Stonehenge's bluestones possess healing properties stem from medieval lore, yet modern spectroscopy reveals trace elements like copper and zinc minerals used in traditional medicine. What unites these theories, from the outlandish to the credible, is humanity's hunger for meaning. The same impulse that led Neolithic builders to erect monoliths drives us to project our own narratives onto them. As new technologies like LiDAR uncover hidden patterns and machine learning deciphers celestial alignments, we edge closer to understanding, but the stones retain their mysteries. Perhaps their greatest lesson is that some questions resist definitive answers, inviting us to keep exploring, testing, and wondering. In that space between knowledge and mystery, the past continues to speak. Beneath the grassy fields surrounding Stonehenge, invisible to the naked eye, lies a hidden world of ancient activity. Thanks to ground-penetrating radar, archaeologists recently discovered a ring of at least 20 massive pits, each over 30 feet wide, positioned in a perfect circle nearly 2 miles across. These enormous shafts, dating back 4,500 years, form what researchers believe was a sacred boundary, marking the limits of a ceremonial landscape far grander than we ever imagined. This revelation came not from decades of painstaking excavation, but from sensors that peer beneath the soil without disturbing a single blade of grass. LiDAR technology has unveiled similar surprises in the jungles of Central America, where lasers penetrate dense canopy to reveal entire cities swallowed by vegetation. In Cambodia, aerial scans exposed the sprawling metropolis surrounding Angkor Wat, a network of roads, canals, and dwellings stretching over 700 square miles. Now, this same technology is being trained on Europe's megalithic sites, exposing hidden earthworks and processional avenues that connect monuments we once thought stood in isolation. The famous Carnac stones in Scotland, for instance, turn out to be just the centerpiece of a vast complex including buried stone circles and lunar observation platforms invisible at ground level. Three-dimensional modeling takes these discoveries even further, allowing researchers to reconstruct sites as they appeared millennia ago. By scanning the weathering patterns on Brittany's menhirs, scientists have digitally restored their original surfaces, revealing painted designs long since faded by wind and rain. At Ireland's Noath Passage tomb, laser scans captured every carving in micrometer detail, exposing symbols too worn for human eyes to detect, including a series of constellations that match night sky patterns from 5,000 years ago. These models don't just preserve the past, they let us step inside it, rotating stones in virtual space to test astronomical alignments or sound propagation that would be impossible to study physically. Perhaps the most personal insights come from DNA analysis, which transforms anonymous bones into individual life stories. genetic studies of skeletons buried near megaliths show many traveled hundreds of miles before death, like the boy with the amber necklace found near Stonehenge, whose teeth isotopes revealed he'd grown up in the Mediterranean. Other remains show family connections spanning generations. At Spain's Dolmen de El Pendon, researchers identified a woman buried with her granddaughter, their bones arranged to face each other for eternity. These intimate details shatter the notion of prehistoric people as faceless crowds, revealing individuals with rich histories, deep bonds, and astonishing mobility. Even the stones themselves are yielding secrets through cutting-edge geology. Portable X-ray fluorescence devices can now analyze a monolith's chemical signature in minutes, tracing its origin to specific quarries. This revealed Stonehenge's smaller bluestones came not just from Wales, as long believed, but from 5 different sites across Western Britain, proof of an extensive trade network operating 3,000 years before the Romans arrived. Similar studies in Sweden matched standing stones to outcrops nearly 200 miles distant, suggesting these were more than local landmarks. They were symbolic imports, carrying the power of distant sacred places. The most exciting developments may still lie ahead. Artificial intelligence now combs through archaeological data, spotting patterns no human could discern. One algorithm analyzing cup-marked stones across Europe detected a recurring configuration matching the Pleiades star cluster's position during the Bronze Age. Another project uses machine learning to reconstruct fragmented oral histories, potentially reviving the myths and songs that once brought these silent stones to life. As quantum computing emerges, researchers dream of modeling entire prehistoric landscapes, simulating how sound, light, and movement flowed through ceremonial spaces we can now only glimpse in fragments. What's clear is that every technological leap peels back another layer of the megalithic mystery. The stones have been waiting patiently for us to develop the tools to understand them, and with each advancement, they whisper a little louder. Far from removing the wonder, these discoveries deepen it, revealing our ancestors not as primitive figures, but as sophisticated thinkers whose monumental achievements we're only beginning to measure. The true revelation may be this: the more we learn, the more we realize how much remains to be discovered. Moving massive stones across miles of rugged terrain wasn't just a test of strength, it was a triumph of social organization. Picture hundreds of people hauling a single 30-ton monolith, their collective effort orchestrated with the precision of a well-rehearsed symphony. At Britain's Durrington Walls, just 2 miles from Stonehenge, archaeologists uncovered the remains of vast feasting pits containing bones from thousands of animals, evidence of communal gatherings where laborers were fed like an army on campaign. The scale of provisioning alone speaks volumes. Feeding a workforce of 500 for 6 months would have required 45 tons of grain and 200 head of cattle. This wasn't occasional volunteer work. It was a society marshalling its resources with military-like coordination. What's striking is how these projects reveal different models of social structure. In Orkney, the construction of the Ness of Brodgar complex around 3200 BCE shows signs of rotating labor seasonal crews arriving from across the archipelago, their work synchronized with agricultural cycles. Contrast this with Wessex, where Stonehenge's bluestone transport may have involved chieftains commanding tribute labor from subordinate territories. The variation is telling. Some megalithic cultures operated like egalitarian cooperatives, while others had clear hierarchies. At Portugal's Almenda's Cromlech, the absence of elite burials nearby suggests communal decision-making, while the lavish grave goods near Germany's Externstein imply projects directed by powerful leaders. The logistics go beyond muscle and meals. Quarrying stones like the Sarsens at Stonehenge required specialists who understood fracture patterns, knowledge passed down through generations. At the Carnac alignments, the geometric precision of thousands of stones positioned in straight rows hints at surveyors using ropes and stakes to maintain alignment over miles. These weren't random villagers pitching in. They were skilled workforces with designated roles, from toolmakers supplying antler picks to cooks brewing nourishing stews in massive ceramic pots discovered near construction sites. The true marvel lies in the intangible infrastructure, the social contracts that made such cooperation possible. In Brittany, the alignment of menhirs along ancient cattle droveways suggests clans negotiated land access for both monuments and livestock. Ireland's Boyne Valley tombs contain stones from multiple regions, implying reciprocal labor agreements between distant communities. Some researchers propose these projects served as Neolithic team-building exercises, forging alliances through shared sacred work. The evidence is etched in the stones themselves. At Sweden's Stenar, geological analysis shows different segments were built by distinct family groups, their contributions literally set in stone for eternity. The psychological impact of this collective endeavor may have been as important as the physical structures. Participating in raising a monolith that would outlive generations could transform individual identity, binding people to something greater than themselves. The act of construction might have been the real ritual, the finished monument simply its memorial. When we look at these stones today, we're not just seeing ancient engineering. We're witnessing the birth of complex society itself, where strangers became neighbors and neighbors became builders of eternity. For decades, the image of prehistoric megalith builders has been dominated by burly men hauling massive stones, a narrative shaped more by modern assumptions than archaeological evidence. Recent discoveries are shattering this stereotype, revealing women not only participated in these monumental projects, but may have held pivotal roles in their conception. At France's St. Michel tumulus, excavators uncovered the skeleton of a high-status woman buried with stone working tools, her arms showing the same muscular development as male laborers. Nearby, the Carnac alignments feature carvings of distinctly female figures holding what appear to be surveying cords, their postures echoing modern engineers supervising construction. These aren't isolated examples across Atlantic Europe. From Portugal's Anta Grande do Zambujeiro to Ireland's Noath, women's graves frequently contain stone polishing kits and ochre pigments used to mark monoliths. The skeletal evidence tells a particularly compelling story. Biomechanical analysis of Neolithic women's remains from megalithic regions reveals telltale signs of strenuous labor. Enlarged shoulder joints from lifting, thickened femurs from carrying heavy loads, and spinal wear patterns consistent with years of dragging sledges. At Scotland's Orkney Islands, where the stones of Stenness stand, female skeletons show greater upper body strength than their male counterparts, possibly from specialized tasks like shaping sandstone with mauls. Even more revealing are dental microwear studies. The grooves on women's teeth often match those of modern stonemasons who habitually hold nails or pegs in their mouths while working. These weren't occasional helpers but skilled craftswomen whose bodies bore the marks of their trade. Symbolic representations add another layer to this reinterpretation. The famous Venus of Malta carving found near the Tarxian temples depicts a woman holding what may be a measuring tool, her garment decorated with megalithic motifs. Similar figures appear in Iberian rock art, where female forms are shown directing stone placement alongside astronomical symbols. Most striking are the Sheila Nogig carvings on Irish megaliths, explicit female figures whose prominence near tomb entrances suggests they served as spiritual guardians of these sacred spaces. Far from being passive observers, women may have been the keepers of the geometric and astronomical knowledge encoded in these structures. The burial record paints a picture of surprising gender equity. High-status women's graves near megaliths often contain artifacts identical to those buried with men: stone axes, astrogale dice used for ritual divination, and even miniature stone circles as personal amulets. At Spain's La Peña de los Enamorados, a woman was interred with a full set of astronomical observation tools, notched bones for tracking moon phases, and a quartz crystal for solar alignment. The most poignant discovery came from Sweden's Älvstena, where a woman's cremation urn contained fragments of bluestone identical to the monument's pillars, suggesting she may have been one of its architects. This emerging evidence forces us to reconsider how these societies were organized. The traditional "men move stones, women make pottery" dichotomy crumbles when faced with graves like that of the Ivory Lady at Valencia de la Concepción in Spain, a megalithic-era tomb where a woman was buried with ivory tusks, flint tools, and a ceremonial dagger, her status surpassing all contemporary male burials. Lipid analysis of pottery near British Henges shows vessels used to feed work crews often bear women's fingerprints, indicating they managed food production for large-scale projects. Rather than a strict gender division of labor, megalithic societies appear to have operated on a system of complementary roles, where tasks were assigned by skill rather than sex. The implications ripple beyond archaeology into our understanding of prehistoric spirituality. Many megalithic carvings previously interpreted as generic human forms now reveal subtle gender markers when examined under advanced imaging. At Ireland's Loughcrew cairns, enhanced photography exposed previously unnoticed breast shapes and hairstyles on stick figure carvings, suggesting female ritual specialists oversaw ceremonies. The famous hooded figures of Andalusia's dolmens, once assumed to be male shamans, show hip contours and pelvic lines indicating many represent women. If the architects and priests of these societies were as likely to be female as male, it reshapes our entire conception of Neolithic religion. Perhaps the Earth Mother venerated in later agricultural cults had her origins in these earlier megalithic traditions. What emerges is a picture of societies where gender didn't dictate one's role in monumental endeavors. The woman buried with a stone maul at France's Lochmariaca, the female remains showing spinal trauma from years of load bearing at England's West Kennet Long Barrow. The carvings of women directing ceremonies at Malta's Haga Kim all whisper that megalith building was a collective human achievement, not a masculine one. As we chip away at the assumptions layered over these silent stones, we uncover a more nuanced truth. The past was likely far more egalitarian than we ever imagined. The real monument isn't just the stones themselves, it's the invisible social structure that enabled their creation, a structure where every hand, regardless of gender, had a part to play in reaching for the heavens. The stones didn't just rise from the earth, they rose in response to it. Around 5,000 years ago, as Neolithic communities faced dramatic climate shifts, the landscape itself seemed to demand markers of permanence. Pollen samples from bogs near Britain's stone circles tell a story of once fertile valleys turning colder and wetter, forcing farmers to adapt or migrate. In this light, monuments like Stonehenge take on new meaning not just as celestial calendars, but as anchors of stability in an unstable world. The sheer effort of dragging bluestones from Wales during this era speaks volumes. When survival grew precarious, people invested in projects that bound them together, literally and spiritually. Coastal locations reveal another layer of environmental strategy. The Carnac stones in Brittany stand where rising sea levels had swallowed earlier settlements, their alignment perhaps a territorial claim to newly scarce arable land. Similarly, Orkney's Ring of Brodgar was erected on an isthmus between two lochs, a deliberate choice amplifying its visibility while controlling access to freshwater and fishing grounds. These weren't random holy sites, they were strategic assertions in a changing world where controlling resources meant survival. Even the placement of Ireland's wedge tombs along migratory routes suggests dual purposes, honoring ancestors while monitoring seasonal game movements disrupted by climate fluctuations. The architecture itself encodes environmental adaptation. Malta's Haga Kim temples feature stone blocks with fossilized marine organisms strategically positioned outward to withstand erosion from seasonal winds. In Portugal's Almenda's cromlech, cup marks carved into stones align with natural fissures that channel rainwater into reservoirs during droughts. Most striking are the sounding stones, found from Scotland to Korea, monoliths placed near fault lines that emit low-frequency hums when tectonic stress builds, serving as early seismic warnings. These features reveal builders who didn't just react to their environment but conversed with it, turning stone into both sentinel and scribe of ecological change. Recent isotopic studies add intimate detail to this picture. Tooth enamel from skeletons buried near megaliths in Sweden shows cyclical malnutrition patterns matching periods of volcanic winter, times when communities likely turned to monument building as communal insurance against famine. At Scotland's Ness of Brodgar, layers of crushed seashells in construction mortar coincide with colder decades, suggesting shellfish became dietary staples when crops failed, their shells repurposed to bind stones as people bound themselves together. The monuments thus emerge as physical manifestations of resilience, their durability a defiant counterpoint to the fragility of life in a shifting world. This environmental lens transforms how we interpret megalithic symbolism. The spirals carved at Newgrange, long seen as solar motifs, may also represent whirlpools, a nod to the tempestuous floods that plagued early agricultural communities. The recurring serpent shapes on Iberian dolmens could symbolize not just rebirth but the rivers that brought both life and destruction. Even the towering menhirs of France take on new meaning when viewed as territorial markers in landscapes where fertile soil was becoming a contested commodity. The stones stood as witnesses to humanity's first great challenge: how to endure when the earth itself seemed uncertain. What modern eyes perceive as ancient ruins were, in their time, dynamic responses to ecological crisis. The same impulse that today drives nations to erect flood barriers or drought-resistant crops once moved communities to raise monoliths not as passive monuments, but as active participants in the struggle to survive. When we run our hands along their weathered surfaces, we're touching more than stone. We're touching the indelible imprint of people who refused to vanish without a trace, who chose to speak across millennia in the only language the elements couldn't erase. The stones didn't stand silent, they pulsed with life, serving as stages for ceremonies that wove communities together under the open sky. At Avebury, the scorched remains of countless feasts tell a story of gatherings that transcended mere sustenance. Analysis of animal bones reveals meticulous butchering patterns, skulls arranged in circles, thigh bones stacked like sacred kindling, suggesting every cut was part of a ritual script. The sheer volume of debris is staggering, enough pottery fragments to reconstruct thousands of vessels, many deliberately shattered in patterns that mirror the fracturing of winter ice. These weren't casual meals but communal acts of devotion, where the act of sharing food became a covenant with the divine. Some of the most telling clues come from what was left behind intentionally. In the shadows of Scotland's Callanish stones, archaeologists uncovered caches of polished stone axes, tools too exquisite for practical use, their edges unmarked by labor. These were likely offerings, perhaps gifts to deities or ancestral spirits. Even more evocative are the deposits of brightly colored pebbles found at Spain's Antequera Dolmen, arranged in geometric patterns that vanish when viewed from any angle but one, a hidden message meant solely for the gods. The care taken in these placements speaks of ceremonies where every gesture held meaning, every object a syllable in a silent prayer. The monuments themselves often served as celestial theaters. During the summer solstice at Ireland's Loughcrew Cairns, sunlight pierces the passage to illuminate a stone carved with radiating lines, an effect that lasts precisely 17 minutes before fading. Imagine the hushed anticipation as spectators watched this brief miracle, timed perfectly to coincide with chants or drumbeats we can only reconstruct from the acoustics of the space. At Portugal's Almenda's cromlech, certain stones echo at frequencies that induce trance states, suggesting rituals where sound and architecture conspired to transport participants beyond the ordinary. Cyclical renewal lay at the heart of these gatherings. Layers of ash at England's Durrington walls show bonfires relit in the same spots for centuries, always following an 8-year pattern that matches Venus' celestial dance. In the Orkney Islands, analysis of soil near the stones of Stenness revealed alternating layers of crushed seashells and burnt grain, a tactile representation of the eternal exchange between sea and land, death and rebirth. The very ground remembers these rhythms, preserving the imprint of processions that circled stones in numbers matching lunar phases or the human gestation cycle. Storytelling likely wove through these rites like threads through a loom. The acoustics of Newgrange's chamber amplify whispers into resonant echoes, perfect for reciting ancestral sagas. Carvings at Sweden's Älvstena depict scenes that unfold sequentially when viewed by torchlight, an ancient flipbook animating myths of creation. Perhaps most moving are the child-sized footprints fossilized in mud near Carnac's menhirs, suggesting ceremonies where the young were initiated into communal memory, their small steps tracing paths older than written language. What emerges is a picture of monuments that were never truly dormant. Between celestial alignments, they thrummed with human activity. The scent of roasting meat, the cadence of chants, the flicker of firelight on painted stones. The rituals practiced there weren't interruptions of daily life, but its culmination, moments when the mundane world touched the eternal. Every scorched bone, every polished offering, every wear pattern on stone steps tells the same truth. These were places where heaven and earth met in the shared breath of a community bound across generations. The great stone circles and towering menhirs didn't vanish overnight. They faded gradually, like echoes across a valley, as the world that birthed them transformed. Around 4,000 years ago, the rhythmic clink of chisels shaping monoliths gave way to the metallic ring of bronze tools, marking a profound shift in human priorities. In Britain, the later stages of Stonehenge's construction saw smaller, rougher stones added almost as an afterthought, while across Europe, older monuments were repurposed, Stone Age temples becoming Bronze Age fortresses or Iron Age marketplaces. The change wasn't sudden abandonment but a slow turning away, like a child outgrowing old toys while still keeping them in the attic. Climate played a silent but relentless role in this transition. Pollen records from Ireland's seed fields reveal how once fertile lands near megalithic sites gradually became waterlogged bogs, forcing communities to scatter or adapt. In Scandinavia, the very stones themselves tell the story. Lichen growth patterns on burial mounds indicate centuries-long stretches of colder, wetter weather that made massive construction projects impractical. The megalith builders had mastered their environment, but when that environment shifted, so did their focus. Instead of communally raising stones to mark the heavens, they turned inward, crafting personal amulets and household shrines smaller, more portable expressions of faith suited to a mobile, uncertain world. New technologies didn't just offer alternatives, they transformed how people related to the divine. The advent of metalworking created a priesthood of smiths who wielded fire and magic to shape gleaming swords and ceremonial cauldrons. These objects carried prestige in ways that communal stone circles could not. They could be traded, inherited, or brandished in battle. A bronze axe head buried with a chieftain at Bush Barrow near Stonehenge speaks volumes. Here was wealth that could be held in one hand, not shared across a landscape. The stones remained, but the cultural impulse that raised them had atomized into something more individualistic, more hierarchical. Religious revolutions accelerated the shift. Across Europe, cremation replaced burial in megalithic tombs, severing the tangible link between ancestors and their stone houses. The gods themselves seemed to change. Sky deities associated with thunder and lightning eclipsed the earth mothers and solar spirits of the megalithic world. At Portugal's Almenda's cromlech, later carvings overlay older ones' spirals and cup marks obscured by crude daggers and sun crosses, as if new beliefs were literally overwriting the old. Some sites became taboo. Breton folklore tells of menhirs that sank into the ground when Christianity arrived, though in truth they were likely toppled or buried by those seeking to erase their power. Yet the decline wasn't uniform. In some places, megalithic traditions evolved rather than disappeared. The taller sanctuaries of Menorca, built 1,000 years after most European megaliths were abandoned, show how older forms could be reinvented, their T-shaped pillars echoing ancestral designs but serving new Mediterranean cults. Similarly, India's later megalithic cultures persisted into the Iron Age, their stone circles becoming memorials for warriors rather than temples for sky watchers. Even in decline, the stones proved adaptable, their meanings fluid enough to serve generation after generation in changing ways. The final messages of these monuments may be written as much in their abandonment as in their construction. At Orkney's Ness of Brodgar, excavators found a ceremonial complex deliberately decommissioned, its altars dismantled, its painted walls whitewashed, and its entrance sealed with a carefully placed whalebone. This wasn't neglect but ritual closure, a conscious farewell to ancient ways. Elsewhere, the stones themselves became oracles of a sort. Medieval Welsh texts describe kings consulting the old stones before battles, suggesting their power lingered even when their original purpose was forgotten. What emerges isn't a single story of collapse, but countless local endings, some violent, some peaceful, some so gradual they barely registered. The megaliths didn't so much disappear as recede into the landscape, becoming waypoints for shepherds, curiosities for antiquarians, and eventually puzzles for archaeologists. Their builders would likely marvel that we still ponder their meaning millennia later, that their silent stones outlasted empires, languages, and gods they could never have imagined. In the end, the monument's greatest testament may be their endurance, not as ruins but as questions carved in stone, inviting every generation to seek its own answers. The ancient stones that once served as celestial calendars and sacred gathering places have found new life in the modern imagination, becoming mirrors that reflect our deepest yearnings and unanswered questions. Every summer solstice, the fields around Stonehenge transform into a vibrant tapestry of neon-clad druids, curious tourists, and earnest spiritual seekers, all drawn to witness the sunrise between those weathered sarsens. But this isn't just a reenactment of lost rituals. It's a living tradition reinvented for the digital age. Neo-pagan groups blend archaeological research with intuitive practice, crafting ceremonies that honor both the monument's astronomical precision and its enduring mystery. The same stones that guided Bronze Age farmers now anchor hashtags and live streams, their shadows stretching across Instagram feeds as readily as they once marked the turning of the seasons. Beyond spiritual revivals, megaliths have become laboratories for cutting-edge science. At Scotland's Callanish Stones, researchers recently employed subatomic particle detectors to search for hidden chambers, the same technology used to explore the Great Pyramid. Meanwhile, in Portugal's Almendar's cromlech, drone-mounted spectrometers analyze lichen growth patterns to reconstruct millennia of microclimate changes. These sites now serve as open-air archives, their surfaces scanned millimeter by millimeter to extract data invisible to the naked eye. What's fascinating isn't just the technology itself, but how it reframes our relationship with the past. The laser that maps Newgrange's spirals connects directly to the stone tools that carved them, both instruments of human curiosity spanning 5,000 years. The stones also thrive in popular culture, their enigmatic presence fueling novels, films, and even video games. From bestsellers like Bernard Cornwell's Stonehenge to the haunting megaliths in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, these monuments have become storytelling shortcuts for the ancient and the arcane. Yet their fictional portrayals often reveal more about contemporary anxieties than historical truth. The same stones that appear as alien landing pads in conspiracy theories also star in environmental allegories, where they symbolize humanity's lost harmony with nature. A single menhir in Brittany might simultaneously inspire a New Age healing retreat, a doctoral thesis on Neolithic engineering, and a heavy metal album cover, proof that their meaning lies not in the rock itself, but in the eyes of those who gaze upon it. This cultural revival has sparked unexpected collaborations. In Ireland, traditional stonemasons apprentice alongside engineers to preserve Newgrange's weathering facade, merging Iron Age techniques with 3D printed replacement parts. Japanese game designers consult with archaeologists to recreate Orkney's Ring of Brodgar in virtual reality, allowing users to experience solstice alignments from across the globe. Even the contentious realm of archaeoacoustics, studying how ancient sites manipulate sound, has brought together physicists, musicians, and historians to decode what might have been the world's first architectural soundscapes. The stones compel us to bridge disciplines just as they once connected earth to sky. Yet for all our technology and reinterpretation, the megaliths retain their essential mystery. A child tracing spiral carvings at Gavrinis feels the same awe as a Bronze Age initiate, even if their explanations differ. The stones refuse to be fully domesticated by our narratives. They stand as reminders that some truths transcend eras, speaking in a language older than writing. Whether viewed through the lens of science, spirituality, or art, they challenge us to humble ourselves before the unknown. In an age of instant answers, their silent endurance asks the rarest of questions. Not what do we think of them, but what might they still teach us? The weathered stones that have stood for millennia now face threats their builders could never have imagined. At Ireland's Newgrange, the soft quartzite facade, once gleaming white in the sunlight, is slowly crumbling under the touch of thousands of visitors each year. The oils from human hands accelerate erosion, leaving conservators with an impossible choice: restrict access to preserve the monument's physical integrity, or allow continued visitation knowing it risks irreversible damage. This tension plays out globally, from the graffiti-scarred menhirs of Carnac to Stonehenge's compressed soil, where decades of foot traffic have altered the water drainage patterns that once kept its massive sarsens stable. Climate change adds another layer of urgency. Rising sea levels threaten coastal sites like Scotland's Callanish Stones, where saltwater intrusion is destabilizing ancient foundations. In Sweden, increasingly violent storms have toppled centuries-old runestones, their carved messages lost to the elements. Even seemingly subtle shifts matter. The lichen species that once protected Brittany's dolmens from rain erosion are dying off as temperatures rise, leaving the stones vulnerable. Preservation teams now employ microclimate monitors and drone surveys to track these changes, but the solutions are rarely simple. When Spanish archaeologists installed protective canopies over the Antequera dolmen, they inadvertently disrupted the precise solar alignments that made the site significant, a stark reminder that protecting megaliths often means altering the very features we seek to preserve. The debate over reconstruction fractures the archaeological community. After Vandals toppled a 4,000-year-old menhir in France's Lochmariaca, some advocated for re-erecting it using traditional methods as both an educational tool and a symbolic act of defiance. Others argued the fallen stone had become its own important artifact, a testament to modern threats as much as ancient craftsmanship. Similar controversies surround sites like England's Avebury, where 18th-century farmers broke up stones for building materials. Should we fill these gaps with replicas or let the absences speak? Japan's approach at the Oyu stone circles offers a middle path. Damaged stones are stabilized in their current positions, while augmented reality installations allow visitors to visualize missing elements without physical intervention. Tourism presents perhaps the thorniest challenge. The revenue from visitors funds vital conservation work. Stonehenge's new underground visitor center was financed by ticket sales, but the sheer volume of foot traffic takes a toll. Some sites have implemented innovative solutions. Sweden's Ale Stenar limits access via timed ticketing, while Portugal's Almenda's Cromlech offers virtual reality tours that reduce physical crowding. Yet these measures spark new questions. Does experiencing a megalith through a screen strip it of its power? And who decides which populations get privileged access? Local communities, academic researchers, or international tourists whose dollars support preservation? Indigenous perspectives are increasingly shaping these conversations. In Australia, Aboriginal elders now co-manage the Murujuga petroglyphs, using traditional knowledge to balance access with spiritual protection. Similarly, Native American tribes have successfully advocated for the reburial of human remains uncovered at mound sites, asserting that respect for ancestors trumps scientific curiosity. These collaborations highlight a growing recognition that megaliths aren't just historical artifacts, they're living landscapes with ongoing cultural significance. Technology offers both promise and peril. While 3D scanning can create perfect digital records of at-risk carvings, the laser scanners themselves can subtly degrade delicate surfaces over time. Drones provide aerial views without trampling surrounding flora, but their rotor wash has been shown to dislodge loose stones. Even well-intentioned interventions can backfire. The moisture-resistant coatings applied to Scottish standing stones in the 1970s inadvertently accelerated cracking by trapping salts inside the rock. The ethical dilemmas multiply when considering restoration versus authenticity. At Malta's Haga Kim, protective tents now shield the temples from further weathering, but their futuristic design clashes with the ancient stones, a visual reminder that preservation always involves compromise. Perhaps the greatest lesson these monuments teach is about impermanence itself. The builders knew their works would change. The winter solstice alignment at Newgrange required adjustments over centuries as Earth's tilt shifted. Our efforts to freeze them in time may misunderstand their original purpose as dynamic spaces meant to evolve alongside the communities that cherished them. What emerges is a mosaic of approaches as diverse as the stones themselves. From the hands-off monitoring of Orkney's Neolithic villages to the meticulous stone-by-stone disassembly and rebuilding of Peru's Chanquillo Solar Observatory, each solution reflects local values, resources, and interpretations of stewardship. The unifying thread is humility, recognizing that these monuments have survived not through any single strategy, but through generations of people making difficult choices about what to preserve, what to alter, and what to let go. As climate change accelerates and visitor numbers swell, these decisions will only grow more complex, testing our ability to listen not just to the stones, but to each other. When we place megalithic monuments side by side with Egypt's pyramids or Mesopotamia's ziggurats, the contrasts reveal as much about ancient societies as the stones themselves. Pyramids like those at Giza were feats of centralized power. Their construction demanded armies of laborers marshaled by god-kings to create eternal resting places for a privileged few. The Great Pyramid's precision-cut limestone blocks, quarried and hauled with almost industrial efficiency, reflect a hierarchical society where resources flowed toward the apex. Yet wander through the rolling hills of Britain's Avebury, and you'll encounter a different vision of monument building. Here, the massive stones form a circle nearly a quarter-mile wide, embracing an entire village within its arms. Unlike the pyramid's exclusionary passages leading to sealed burial chambers, Avebury's open design invited communal gathering, its very architecture whispering of collective effort rather than royal decree. Ziggurats tell another story altogether. These stepped temples of Mesopotamia, like Ur's towering shrine to the moon god Nana, were artificial mountains bridging earth and heaven, but exclusively for priests. Their baked brick construction, rising in precise tiers toward celestial observation platforms, served as ritual staircases where only the anointed could ascend. Contrast this with the Callanish stones on Scotland's windswept Isle of Lewis, where anyone could walk among the monoliths tracing lunar cycles. The basalt pillars, weathered into organic shapes that mimic the surrounding landscape, feel less like architecture imposed upon nature than a conversation with it. Where ziggurats celebrated human dominion over the elements, megaliths often sought harmony, their placements revealing deep observations of terrain and tide. Materials themselves speak volumes about cultural priorities. The pyramid's gleaming white Tura limestone casing stones, polished to reflect the sun, proclaimed permanence and prestige. Aztec temples like Tenochtitlan's Templo Maya glittered with stucco and sacrificial offerings, their bright colors renewed regularly in a cycle of ritual renewal. Megaliths, by contrast, wore their ruggedness proudly. The unworked sarcens of Stonehenge, their pockmarked surfaces still bearing the marks of ancient glaciers, connected to something primal rather than perfected. This wasn't a lack of skill. The joints between stones prove otherwise, but a deliberate choice to let the raw essence of the land shine through. Purpose may be the most revealing difference. While Egypt's pyramids secured immortality for divine rulers and ziggurats facilitated controlled encounters with the gods, megalithic sites like Ireland's Newgrange served broader cosmic functions. Its winter solstice alignment wasn't just a spectacle for elites, but a communal reassurance that the sun would return for all. Similarly, the Carnac alignment's sprawling rows seemed designed to guide processions of ordinary people across the landscape, turning ritual into a participatory journey rather than a spectator event. Even in death, megalithic tombs like Spain's Antequera dolmen accommodated multiple generations of remains, suggesting ancestral veneration wasn't reserved for a select few. Technological approaches varied just as dramatically. Pyramid builders relied on precise mathematics and standardized measurement systems. The cubit rods found in Giza workshops attest to an almost obsessive focus on uniformity. Megalithic engineers, by contrast, often worked with organic irregularities. At England's Rollright Stones, each weathered limestone pillar was deliberately selected for its unique shape, then positioned to create a collective harmony from individual quirks. The difference echoes through the ages. One culture sought to conquer nature's chaos through perfect geometry, another to collaborate with it through adaptive design. Yet for all these contrasts, a unifying thread emerges: humanity's drive to make meaning from stone. Whether it's the pyramid's celestial alignments matching Orion's belt or the Menorca Talayot's strategic sightlines across the Mediterranean, these monuments share a common language of astronomy and territory. The real lesson isn't that one approach was superior, but that our ancestors' ingenuity blossomed in countless forms. From the communal poetry of megaliths to the concentrated power of pyramids, each structure reflects a unique dialogue between human aspiration and the materials at hand, a conversation that continues every time we stand in their shadows, marveling at how differently and how brilliantly ancient minds solved the same eternal questions. There's something undeniably magnetic about standing in the shadow of a 5,000-year-old monolith, a visceral reaction that goes beyond mere curiosity. The moment you reach out to touch the weathered surface of a standing stone, time seems to collapse. Your fingers trace grooves carved by hands that vanished millennia ago, and suddenly, you're not just an observer of history, you're part of an unbroken chain of human wonder. This isn't just imagination at work. Neuroscientists studying brain activity at sites like Stonehenge have recorded heightened activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region linked to awe and existential reflection. It's as if the stones trigger a primal switch in our minds, one that forces us to reckon with our fleeting presence against their enduring silence. The sheer scale of these monuments plays tricks on the psyche. A menhir towering overhead doesn't just impress, it humbles. Research in environmental psychology shows that encounters with overwhelming vertical structures trigger what's called the cathedral effect, lowering heart rates and inducing a meditative state. Ancient builders likely understood this intuitively, the way Carnac's aligned stones stretch toward the horizon like a procession, or how Newgrange's entrance narrows to compress your body before releasing you into the domed chamber, suggests deliberate manipulation of space to heighten emotional impact. These aren't passive objects, they're architectural invitations to transcend the everyday, yet not all responses are serene. Many visitors report unease, a tingling sense of being watched, or the sudden chill described at Scotland's Clogher Cairns even on sunny days. Parapsychologists attribute this to infrasound, frequencies below human hearing that certain megaliths emit due to wind or geological vibrations. These waves can induce dizziness, nausea, or the eerie feeling of an unseen presence. Whether by accident or design, the stones seem to wield an uncanny ability to blur the line between the physical and the numinous. Folk traditions across cultures speak of megaliths as thresholds, places where the veil between worlds grows thin. Modern visitors clutching cameras instead of talismans still feel that whisper of otherness, a reminder that rationality hasn't entirely erased our capacity for wonder. The emotional power of these sites may stem from their paradoxical nature. They're both profoundly ancient and startlingly immediate. A trilithon at Stonehenge is alien in its scale and purpose, yet the tool marks on its surface are as familiar as the calluses on a modern stonemason's hands. This duality forces us to confront what it means to be human across the abyss of time. Psychologists call this temporal dissonance, the cognitive vertigo sparked when touching something that witnessed centuries you can't fathom. The stones become mirrors reflecting our own impermanence, silent witnesses to generations who, like us, laughed, grieved, and gazed at the same stars. Ritual landscapes amplify this effect. Walking the avenue at Avebury, where serpentine earthworks guide your steps toward the stone circle, creates a narrative arc straight out of contemporary psychology's hero's journey. The deliberate pacing approach, initiation, return mirrors modern therapeutic practices for processing trauma or life transitions. Indigenous elders from Australia to Norway have long insisted these sites were alive with memory, a notion that Western science is only beginning to explore through studies on how quartz-rich stones can store and transmit electromagnetic data. Whether metaphorical or literal, the idea that megaliths remember resonates deeply in an age obsessed with preserving digital legacies. Perhaps the most profound psychological gift these stones offer is the antidote to modern fragmentation. In a world of fleeting notifications and disposable trends, they model a different relationship with time. The builders of Carnac or Göbekli Tepe thought in generations, not quarters or election cycles. Their monuments ask uncomfortable questions. What are we building that will outlast us? What truths would we carve in stone? The unease and elation they provoke aren't opposites, they're two sides of the same coin, minted from our deepest yearning to matter in a universe that outlasts us all. Standing before them, we're reminded that wonder isn't just an emotion, it's a bridge across time, connecting the hands that raised these stones to the hands that now reach out to touch them. Beneath the soil of familiar megalithic sites and in untouched landscapes across the globe, countless stones still wait to tell their stories. Only 10% of known megalithic sites have been thoroughly excavated, meaning 90% of their secrets remain locked in the earth. Take Turkey's Karahan Tepe, a sister site to Gerbically Tepe, where ground-penetrating radar has revealed at least 250 standing stones still buried. Some pillars appear to be carved with intricate animal reliefs unlike anything seen before, potentially rewriting our understanding of Neolithic artistry. Nearby, unopened chambers show thermal anomalies suggesting large, hollow spaces. Could these be untouched ritual rooms or even early astronomical observatories? The carvings we've already found hold mysteries of their own. On Scotland's Orkney Islands, the Ness of Brodgar's stones are covered in geometric patterns that resist modern interpretation. Recent multispectral imaging has exposed previously invisible markings, grids, and dots that may represent lunar calendars or territorial maps. Even more tantalizing are the recurring symbols found from Portugal to India, like the crook and spiral motif seen at both Newgrange and the untouched megaliths of India's higher Binnacle. Are these the remnants of a shared prehistoric language, or do they reflect universal human responses to natural phenomena? Advanced AI pattern recognition is now scanning thousands of these symbols, searching for syntactic structures that might reveal the first whispers of written communication. Emerging technologies promise to peel back layers of history without disturbing a single stone. Muon tomography, which uses cosmic rays to create X-ray-like images of dense structures, could soon map the interior of Cornwall's massive Chun Quoit without excavation. In Sweden, researchers are testing quantum magnetometers to detect faint magnetic signatures left by ancient fires, clues to ceremonial practices invisible to conventional archaeology. Perhaps most revolutionary is protein analysis on stone surfaces, which can now identify microscopic traces of organic materials. At Avebury, this technique recently detected traces of fermented honey and poppy on altar stones, suggesting ritual intoxication practices far older than previously documented. The greatest revelations may come from beneath the waves. Rising sea levels after the last ice age submerged vast coastal areas where megalithic cultures thrived. Sonar surveys off Wales' Pembrokeshire coast have revealed stone circles perfectly preserved under 30 feet of water, their alignment matching nearby terrestrial sites. These underwater monuments could confirm theories about prehistoric maritime networks, showing how ideas traveled along coastlines now lost to the sea. Similar finds in Indonesia's Sunderland and India's Gulf of Combat hint at a global pattern that some of humanity's earliest monumental architecture may lie on drowned continental shelves, waiting to reshape our origin narratives. Even well-studied sites harbor unanswered questions. Stonehenge's smaller bluestones have long been known to come from Wales, but how did Neolithic people transport them 140 miles? Experiments with replica sledges and rafts have failed to explain the journey's logistics. A radical new theory suggests glaciers carried the stones close to the site during the Ice Age, with later cultures simply recognizing their significance. If proven, this would mean Stonehenge's builders didn't move the bluestones at all. They incorporated pre-existing sacred stones into their design, blending geological chance with human intention in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. The most profound discoveries may not come from new excavations, but from re-evaluating old ones. Museum storage rooms worldwide hold millions of uncatalogued artifacts from early digs. At Oxford's Pitt Rivers Museum, a recent inventory of 19th century collections uncovered carved chalk plaques from Britain's Neolithic period, their strange perforations matching astronomical diagrams. In Copenhagen, CT scans of a seemingly plain stone box from a Danish dolmen revealed hidden compartments containing preserved plant materials, possibly ritual offerings overlooked for a century. These overlooked fragments remind us that sometimes the future of archaeology isn't just about finding new objects, but seeing familiar ones with fresh eyes. What keeps researchers awake at night are the questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. As genetic analysis becomes more refined, we might discover that megalithic builders belonged to previously unknown human lineages. Advanced pollen studies could reveal that climate catastrophes spurred monument construction in ways we can't yet imagine. There's even the possibility, once dismissed as fantasy, that acoustic studies will prove certain stone arrangements were designed not just to amplify sound, but to generate specific frequencies for healing or altered states. The stones have kept their secrets for millennia, but as our tools evolve, so does our ability to listen. Each scratch on weathered rock, each subtle alignment, each buried artifact is a word in a story we're only starting to read. A story that continues to surprise us with every turn of the trowel and click of the scanner. From Stonehenge's solstice alignments to Gerbically Teep's enigmatic carvings, prehistoric monuments speak a silent language that transcends time. They are not just relics of the past, but living testaments to human curiosity, creativity, and connection. As we decode their messages, we uncover the shared dreams and struggles of those who came before us. These stones remind us that, despite millennia of separation, we are part of an unbroken chain of storytellers, builders, and seekers. The next time you stand before a megalith, listen closely. It might just whisper its secrets to you. What's extraordinary about these ancient structures isn't just their age or scale. It's what they reveal about the universal human impulse to make meaning. The same drive that led Neolithic builders to haul bluestones across mountains lives on in our skyscrapers and space telescopes. We may have swapped stone for steel, but the questions remain. Who are we? Why are we here? The stones don't answer directly, but they hint at something profound, that the urge to reach beyond ourselves is etched into our DNA. Consider how these monuments bridge cultures. The spirals carved at Newgrange mirror those in Polynesian petroglyphs. The solstice alignments of Egypt's Carnac find echoes in the Mayan temples of Chichen Itza. Separated by oceans and centuries, our ancestors looked to the same skies and felt the same awe, translating it into stone. This isn't coincidence, it's evidence of a shared human experience, a collective yearning to touch the infinite. Yet the stones also challenge us. Their precision defies stereotypes about primitive societies. The mathematical sophistication of Stonehenge's Pythagorean triangles, the acoustic genius of Malta's hypogeum, these weren't accidents. They were triumphs of observation and innovation, achieved without writing or wheels. In an age of disposable technology, their endurance is a humbling lesson. True progress isn't just about moving forward, but about building things that last. Perhaps their greatest gift is the way they collapse time. When sunlight pierces Newgrange's passage on the winter solstice, it connects us directly to the moment some farmer priest first witnessed that golden beam 5,000 years ago. The stones dissolve the illusion that we're fundamentally different from our ancestors. Their fears, their hopes, their hunger for beauty, these are ours too. The monoliths stand as mirrors, reflecting not just who we were, but who we still are. The mystery isn't just in the stones, it's in why they still move us. Psychologists call it stone awe, that shiver down your spine when touching something older than civilizations. It's more than respect for craftsmanship, it's recognition. These rocks outlasted languages, empires, and gods, yet they were raised by hands like ours, hands that ached, bled, and kept working towards something greater than any single life. In their silence, they speak volumes about patience, persistence, and the courage to create even when you won't live to see the finished work. So what do we do with this legacy? Preserve it, certainly, but also engage with it. The stones invite us to look up, to measure, to question. They remind us that wonder isn't childish, it's the birthplace of discovery. Whether you're an archaeologist with a trowel or a traveler with a smartphone, these monuments offer the same invitation they did millennia ago. Pause, observe, and add your voice to the conversation. After all, the story isn't carved in stone, it's carried in us, the latest chapter in an epic that began when the first humans stacked stones and dared to dream. If this journey through the whispers of ancient stone has sparked your curiosity, you're not alone. These monuments have been igniting wonder for millennia. But the conversation doesn't end here. Hit that like button if you're as fascinated by these silent storytellers as we are, and subscribe to join us as we keep unraveling history's greatest enigmas. Every click of that notification bell ensures you won't miss our next adventure, whether it's decoding Viking runestones or stepping inside lost cities of the Amazon. Now, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below about the megalithic site that's left you awestruck. Was it the haunting alignments of Carnac, the cosmic precision of Newgrange, or the jaw-dropping scale of Gerbically Teep? Maybe you've stood in the shadow of a lesser-known menhir or dolmen that stirred something in you. Your stories fuel this community of curious minds, and who knows, your travel tip might inspire someone's next pilgrimage to these ancient wonders. Here's the thrilling part: the puzzle isn't complete. With new technologies uncovering hidden chambers and forgotten alignments, this field changes almost daily. That photo you took on vacation last year, it might contain a detail researchers haven't even noticed yet. So grab your phone, scroll through those old travel pics, and look closer. You could spot something groundbreaking. After all, the most famous archaeological discoveries often begin with an ordinary person asking, "Wait, what's that?" Before you go, take a second to share this video with that friend who loves mysteries or history. Maybe you'll kickstart their new obsession, or better yet, plan a road trip to stand among these stones together. There's nothing quite like feeling their weight and weather under your palms, knowing you're touching the same surface as someone from 5,000 years ago. The stones have kept their secrets this long, but they're not done speaking. Stick around, stay curious, and let's keep listening. Who's ready for the next revelation? Because one thing's certain: the past always has another surprise up its